When Heritage started, it was very different than what you folks experience today. It was in a high school, and we rented their little library, and that's where we started our service.
Well, welcome everyone. We are glad that you've all joined us this evening for our first service together. We are excited, a little bit nervous, a whole bunch nervous, really nervous. No, we're not that.
We didn't really know what we were doing, but we were so excited. Pastor Bob was playing his accordion.
Ready, children?
About a year into Heritage, we got the opportunity to move in on Sunday mornings. And once we moved to Sunday mornings, it was crazy. Like all of a sudden, we just started growing. We started in the library, we moved to a music room, to another gym, and ended up eventually in their large gym. We were setting up chairs, we were setting up curtains, we were setting up 2 big semi-truckloads full of equipment, lighting. A lot of the stuff that we use today, we were using back then. But all volunteers setting it up, coming at the crack of dawn every Sunday.
And at the end of the 6 years, we were adding a third person to staff, and this would be a children's pastor. The elders asked if I would write the job description since I had done children and youth for 24 years. And so I said, well, I'd be happy to do that.
During one of the meetings, all of a sudden, we had a resume that popped up on the table. And when we opened up the folder, lo and behold, it was Pastor Bob's resume.
When I was writing out the job description, line by line, I thought, well, I'd like to do that better than what I'm doing.
That was kind of an interesting time to all of a sudden to say like, hey, our lead pastor is actually applying for a new position at the church and he wants to be our children's pastor.
To my amazement and delight, they said, yes, we'll do that. It wasn't that enthusiastic of a yes at the time, but they did it anyway. It was a long, agonizing search, but finally, the Lord led us to the one that He had planned all along for us, Pastor Jeff.
If you're looking at me and you realize I'm not Bob, you're right. Very perceptive. I'm Jeff Forster, and I'm the new guy here. I'm one of the pastors.
After Pastor Jeff arrived, things just started growing, like exponentially. We had more families coming every week and a lot of excitement and kind of buzz about what is Heritage Church. And your neighbors were hearing about it, and your neighbors, people at work were hearing about it. And all of a sudden, we were just growing to the point where we looked around and realized before we know it, we're going to outgrow the largest gym in Lutheran High North, and we better have another plan.
We looked at 28 different buildings as the economy was collapsing in 2008. So we looked at a whole bunch of warehouses and office complexes and things like that all throughout northern Macomb County. And then we wound up seriously contemplating buying some land for a while. And in that land conversation, we met Chad Asman, who's our executive pastor now. He's an architect. And Chad began to design exactly what we were talking about just on a napkin one day. We thought, well, this is a partnership we need to have.
In order for us to actually move in the 1st of October and be able to afford to live here, we had to double in numbers within the next 6 months, or we wouldn't be able to afford this facility. It was crazy. But it was a crazy step of faith that absolutely worked out.
Heritage Church's story also involves another congregation, my former church, Discover Church. We consolidated when we were half the size that we are now, and it has been a pinch me experience and a wild ride.
As we were at the Sterling Heights campus and the church was continuing to grow, there's a certain point of realizing that people were driving from a pretty good distance to come to the church. And it didn't really make sense to have people driving, leaving their community, leaving their neighborhoods to come to this location here. When we first started looking at the thumb and trying to go up in that region, we kind of were looking at Imlay City and some of the surrounding areas of one day it would be great to have a campus. And then suddenly we were approached by someone saying that the movie theater had closed down. They weren't looking at reopening. And so when that came available, it was like, hey, this might be the great opportunity, the time to launch Imlay City and to really be able to see what God can do in that local community.
We've seen multiple baptisms, we've seen lives change, we've seen families restored, relationships restored. I tell you, I've been around the ministry my entire life. I couldn't be more excited about what God is not only just doing in our midst right now, but what we're going to be able to be a part of today, tomorrow, and for the rest of our lives.
We were able to start a pantry once we moved in here. We were feeding people, anyone that came to the door, and a lot of the people that were showing up couldn't speak English, and we had no way to communicate with them.
Next thing you know, this guy shows up and his name's Avdol, and he'd asked to have meetings with me. I just never could fit it in. Finally, we have a meeting, and God just knit my heart to Avdol's. I loved this guy. Without any funding, without any backing from anybody else, they'd begun serving hundreds of refugees. And I just realized we got to plant a church with this guy.
So in 2014, we kicked off the Campus Hope Church.
We came here, me and my wife, from Middle East, and we have vision to reach our people, our Middle Eastern people in Michigan. And really God led us to start and launch Hope Church in 2014.
The impact that this little church that started in a little library with an accordion and some kids, I can't even fathom that this all happened. Sometimes I just sit back and I look around and you know it's only God that's doing this.